Today's not scary thing, I promise, helps us use flash with very little effort. I won't hold out on you any longer. This is about flash meters. Now, before you freak out, I'm going to talk about a very specific way to use them. Flash meters are not nearly as intimidating as they might seem. So I used to, like a lot of people, use a digital camera to measure my flash when I was shooting. It's a nice security blanket. The biggest problem is once you kind of get used to lighting direction, it just becomes very cumbersome. So this is the light meter I tend to use the most. It is a Sekonic L508 zoom master. We'll get into more specifics. I don't mean for this to be a direct, extreme how-to, step-by-step on how to use one of these. I just want to show you that you click and you enter that number in your camera, and that's all this little thing does. And we're just gonna do a lot of examples here. So I'm just going to show you using a flash meter in action. Here I have the flash meter on a cord connected to the flash, which is aimed at a roughly 45-degree angle, a little taller and down onto Madeline. Since the flash is corded, I have it on a corded flash setting, and I'm having her push the button which fires the flash, which means the flash is read by the dome basically on the flash meter, and it gives me an f-stop, an aperture number. And I put the aperture number on my camera, and let's say I'm balancing with the daylight about 1/125th of a second, 1/250th of a second, I think in this case. Actually, let me just show you. The flash is primarily on Madeline, a little bit on the wall, and that's what the f-stop controls. The shutter speed does not control the brightness of the flash. It controls the brightness of the shadows and the ambient light. The ambient light being anything that's not produced by the flash. Here's some shots on gold so you can kind of get a feel for how the daylight comes through. I chose this as my first example because it's just soft shadow area, easy for the flash to overpower. All you need to know about this is this dome right here, ISO button, and this little button right here. So basically you put it on a flash setting, either corded or not corded. Corded, you can plug your cord in, push the button, and it pops your flash. I do it multiple ways. Or the other way, you just hold it down, you pop the flash independently, and it can tell the flash apart from the sun, unless it's really strong direct sunlight, in which case you can retract the dome or just hold your hand under it if you don't have a retractable dome like this Minolta meter. You just hold your hand kind of like that. So right here, I'm metering about where I think Madeline's face is going to be because it was really hot and really bright. There was a really strong sunlight beating down behind where I'm standing, basically. And it's going to be a heavily backlit shot, which on the upside means that her face is going to be basically a silhouette if I exposed for the background, which I did. And then I aimed to underexpose it a little bit for dramatic effect, which meant that I didn't have to have a really powerful flash on her face. So I aimed for about f11 so I could aim for kind of a sun star, because the smaller aperture you create, the more likely you are to create a sun star, which is a little we'll see it, but I think it's a nice effect since I do so much backlighting. And she very helpfully knows about how to spot the flash when it's high enough or low enough or whatever. And since she decided to crouch while standing on these rails, she helped me guide the flash down to the proper spot to keep the light on her face. Just kind of a basic, not quite 45, not quite straight on flash downward onto her a bit. And you see that as bright as it was, this was like 3 o'clock, I think, and she's still brighter than the background. Great dramatic effect, really powerful light on her face, but a little bit of a controlled, darker dramatic effect on the ambient light. So to review, I used the flash meter to get a reading, which in this case was f11. I put f11 on the camera. I put my shutter speed at like 1/500th of a second, and the combination gave me a dramatic shot with a sun star. I understand that gadgets may seem expensive, but this is one that might surprise you. Just go on the auction site, and although that Interfit meter I'm not so sure about, you'll find tons of light meters for well under $100 and sometimes under $50. Names I like to look for include Minolta, who are criminally underrated these days, especially in the light meter department, but also Gossen. I don't know about these dial ones, although you can research them and they're probably not as unusual as they seem. And another great name to look for is Sekonic, although those tend to have maintained their value, but I use them and I think they're great. So what do you need on a flash meter? I'm going to use this one, the Minolta Autometer 3F. Some kind of dome is usually handy. It doesn't have to be retractable. And obviously not all light meters are flash meters, so you need to make sure it's a true flash meter. This one has a nice little port for your PC cord, a little port here. I will put the model names of these in the description so you have something to look for in case you just really aren't sure and you're just really lost. In Kilgore, about to shoot with Shelby in about 20 minutes. And we're gonna go out to the long and winding road. So here's another backlighting case which evolves into something else that you'll see in a minute. So I aim for these to be more backlit photos. In this case, it's actually closer to sunset, so the light's a lot warmer. And if I were to not use a flash with the way I'm shooting this, these would be silhouettes of Shelby. Pretty cool. I'm gonna have you looking out toward this. The lighting you might have heard of in this case would be fill flash, basically. The flash is used to balance the lighting on the subject with the lighting in the background, and the background is much brighter than the subject. In this case, I'm doing it for dramatic effect partially because I love the look of an underexposed, really bright backdrop and then a really crisp lighting on my subject. And for the most part, that's how things started off as. It seemed like it was going well. The flash, I didn't have to set very high at all. I think I was getting away with basically like 1/8 power on the flash because this was ultra expired Fuji 800, but I was shooting at 200 because of loss of sensitivity. And amazingly, it seems to have worked out pretty well. So you see that they would be basically silhouetted, maybe not fully, but close in this lighting. But because I could get away with popping a little flash in the shadow area, it balanced out better for dramatic effect, allowing me to have the subject be fully lit despite the sun, the light source, being behind them. This, however, brings up something else with flash, because shortly through this next roll I shot, my battery died, and I was left only with backlight. Now, I've met people who kind of like stick to natural light or flash, and they're not comfortable with the other thing. The thing about flash for me is that it's about understanding light in general, and that's why I approach flash as in the power of the flash in fractions, the f-stop, and shutter speed. It's a balance that's shockingly easy to get because you have that little light meter, the flash meter, that tells you what f-stop to use. And you can just start f11 every time, and you know that your ambient light at f11 will be whatever it is at f11, which might be 1/120th of a second, let's say. So if you want it darker and you have the ability to do that, you do 1/250th of a second. If you want brighter, you do 1/60th of a second. It's a matter of allowing less or more ambient light in, along with your flash, for whatever effect you want, whether it be even exposure or dramatic contrast. Even though I like the dramatic backlit with the flash look and all the things you can do with it and the quote-unquote editorial looks you can get with it, sometimes you have to recognize the better light is a different type of light, and you have to be able to pry yourself away from your comfort zone if you have the skill set to do so, or if you're forced to. So like I mentioned, the battery died and I was going to have to go full natural lighting. The nice thing about a flash meter is it converts to a reflective light meter, as it's known as, and you can use it just to get general light readings. And I also used my phone light meter for this. By the way, Lumu for the iPhone is an option, but it's a device you have to plug in and purchase for the price of basically a used Sekonic meter. So it's an option, so that you know it exists, but I'm going to concentrate on older analog photography meters, which kind of make things a little cheaper, I guess. But anyway, I shot these backlit, and I'm honestly pretty pleased with them. Actually, a lot so. So maybe I didn't need to bring the flash after all, but it was nice to have the option. Right. Okay, on 3, 1, 2, 3. Cool. Reminder, patrons get to see all of these photos full size or bigger size, and a lot of other perks. Look in the description for more information. Thank you for the support. The airy backlit situation here lent itself perfectly to just metering for Shelby and essentially opening up a stop and a half or 2 stops to overexpose and have this beautiful effect. Sometimes it's good to have mechanical intervention to remind you that there are so many good possibilities out there, especially since, once again, the subject matters most of all. It's not the best audio, but I'm going to play a little clip of me talking to Shelby after this shoot. I feel like it's relevant, especially when you get caught up in thinking about all the options on hand. I think you did great. Are you good?
Yeah.
Cool. Do enough with flash, you think? It all has to have flash. And if you don't do enough flash, here's definitely a trick. If there isn't, if you don't use flash and it's like, oh, well, it's too annoying and difficult to carry flash everywhere.
Right.
So I like to mix it up.
Gotta get a good balance.
Because you get the idea, it's like, oh, one thing or the other, you'll never get good photos that way. I don't think I shot without a flash for like a couple of years.
Oh.
And then there was a time where I didn't shoot with a flash for a couple of years. Like, can I do a little in between?
Right.
Don't forget to subscribe, turn on notifications, leave a comment, like the video, share the video, and tell a friend. And watch the videos that are popping up on our screen right now. Thanks. See you soon.
Now I know about the long and winding road.